My name is Nadia. I'm 28 years old, and last Tuesday I discovered my own family had been plotting against me for months. While reviewing security footage from my home office, I watched in horror as my parents and sister discussed their plan to take over my house using forged documents and fake emergencies. They thought they had planned the perfect scheme, measuring rooms and copying keys while I was away. But they had no idea I'd been recording everything, and the trap I set for them would change our family forever. Before we dive into this shocking story of family betrayal and sweet justice, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you someone who's dealt with toxic family members trying to take advantage of your success? Please hit that like button if you believe in protecting what you've worked hard for. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories of people standing up against manipulation. Trust me, what happens next will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Life wasn't always complicated for me. Just 2 years ago, at 26, I sold my tech startup for $3.2 million. It sounds like a dream come true, and in many ways it was. After years of eating ramen noodles and coding until dawn in my cramped apartment, I finally had the freedom to breathe. The first thing I did was buy a beautiful colonial house in Westchester County, complete with 4 bedrooms, a home office, and the garden I'd always dreamed of having. My parents, Dorothy and Frank, seemed proud at first. They bragged to their friends about their successful daughter and how I'd made it big in tech. But I should have noticed the calculating look in their eyes when they first toured my new home. My mother ran her fingers along the marble countertops with a possessive touch, while my father kept asking about property values and tax assessments. At 56 and 58, respectively, they were nearing retirement with barely any savings, a fact they blamed on raising 2 daughters. The truth was far different. They'd always favored my younger sister Brittany, who at 25 had spent the last 7 years in Los Angeles pursuing an acting career that never materialized. While I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college, they emptied my college fund to pay for Brittany's acting classes and headshots. When I discovered they'd stolen $45,000 meant for my education, they gaslit me into believing it was a family investment in Brittany's future. The pattern of exploitation went deeper than just money. When I was 19, I found out they'd opened credit cards in my name, maxing them out and destroying my credit score. It took me years to rebuild years of fighting creditors and filing police reports they begged me to drop for family unity. Every birthday, every holiday became another opportunity for them to ask for loans they never repaid, always with Brittany's needs taking priority. Recently, the red flags started multiplying. My parents, who previously visited maybe twice a year, suddenly became interested in monthly visits. They'd arrive unannounced often when I was at work, claiming they missed their successful daughter. My mother started asking strange questions about my spare bedrooms, wondering why I needed all that space for just one person. My father photographed every room during visits, saying he wanted to show the neighbors back home. Then came the questions about practical matters. How much was my homeowner's insurance? Did I have good liability coverage? What were the property taxes like? They even asked about tenant laws in New York, claiming they were just curious about real estate. My mother suggested I should look into adding them to my home's deed for emergency purposes in case something happened to me. The biggest warning sign came when Brittany got evicted from her Los Angeles apartment. She called me crying about her cruel landlord who was kicking her out for non-payment, expecting me to wire her money as usual. When I refused, explaining I was done enabling her failures, she hung up on me. Within days, she was back at our parents' house, and suddenly they were pushing hard for a family meeting about Brittany's future. My mother's friend Ruth let something slip during a chance encounter at the grocery store. She mentioned how nice it was that I was finally going to help Brittany get back on her feet with the moving situation. When I pressed for details, she backpedaled quickly, but the damage was done. Something was being planned, and I was intentionally being kept in the dark. I started documenting everything, saving every text message and email, though I didn't yet know how valuable this evidence would become. Everything changed after my neighbor experienced a break-in. The Johnsons lived 3 houses down, and while they were on vacation, someone broke into their home and stole electronics and jewelry. It was a wake-up call for our quiet neighborhood, and I decided to install a comprehensive security system. Beyond the standard cameras at entry points, I added discrete cameras in my home office and living areas synced to motion detection that would alert my phone. 3 weeks later, I was at a tech conference in San Francisco when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. Assuming it was the cleaning service I'd scheduled, I almost ignored it. But something made me check the live feed, and my blood ran cold. There in my home were my parents touring through rooms like real estate agents showing a property. My mother was testing keys and different locks while my father photographed my personal documents spread across my desk. I watched in stunned silence as they moved methodically through my house. My mother opened closets counting space while my father measured rooms with an actual tape measure he'd brought along. They weren't just snooping, they were cataloging my home like inventory. The violation felt visceral watching them invade my private space with such calculated precision. When I returned home and reviewed the full footage, what I discovered was worse than simple trespassing. The cameras had captured conversations that revealed a months-long conspiracy. In my home office, my parents discussed their plan in detail, believing they were alone. My mother's voice was clear as she outlined their strategy to move Brittany into my house against my will. The plan was diabolical in its simplicity. They would claim Brittany was having a mental health crisis and needed family support immediately. Using a fabricated story about suicide attempts and instability, they'd guilt me into letting her stay temporarily. Once she was in the house, they'd produce a backdated tenant agreement they'd already prepared establishing her legal residency going back 6 months. New York's tenant protection laws would make it nearly impossible for me to evict her without a lengthy legal battle. But it went further. They discussed using the family connection to eventually claim partial ownership of my home. My father mentioned their lawyer cousin Harold, who'd advised them that if they could prove family investment in the property through Brittany's residency and their elder care needs, they might be able to force a sale or transfer of partial ownership. They planned to claim I'd verbally promised them retirement security in my home. I discovered they'd made copies of my house keys months ago during a visit when I'd left them unattended while dealing with a work emergency. They'd been entering my home regularly, going through my financial documents and building their case. My father had photographed my bank statements, investment accounts, and property deed. They knew exactly how much my house was worth and how much money I had saved. The security footage revealed more disturbing details. Brittany had been in my house too, selecting which room would be hers, and even measuring for furniture. I found a recorded conversation where she laughed about how she deserved this house more than me because she'd suffered in Los Angeles while Nadia got lucky with her stupid app. She'd already posted on private social media about her upcoming move to a gorgeous house in Westchester. Text messages between them, which they'd foolishly discussed in my living room, revealed the timeline. The family meeting was scheduled for the following week. They planned to arrive with Brittany's belongings already in a moving truck, presenting her residency as a done deal. Harold had prepared all the legal documents, including a fraudulent rental agreement and falsified bank records showing Brittany had been paying rent to me for 6 months. The conspiracy went even deeper when I checked with other sources. My mother's friend Ruth, when pressed, admitted she'd been asked to be a witness to Brittany's residency at my address. Several of my parents' friends had been told Brittany had been living with me for months, establishing a social narrative that would support their legal claims. They'd been building this lie within their entire social circle, creating a network of people who believed their false timeline. Armed with this devastating knowledge, I knew I needed professional help. I reached out to Melissa Crawford, a Harvard Law classmate who'd become a successful attorney specializing in family property disputes. When I showed her the footage and evidence, her expression went from skepticism to alarm. She immediately began building a legal strategy to protect my assets and expose their fraud. The first step was creating an impenetrable legal shield around my property. Melissa helped me transfer my house to an LLC, effectively removing it from personal ownership and making any family claims significantly more difficult. We backdated the LLC formation legally to before their plan began, using the proper legal channels to ensure everything was above board. The house was now owned by NDK Holdings LLC, with myself as the sole member but protected by corporate structure. Next, I began planting false information to confuse their strategy. During a casual phone call with my mother, I mentioned being stressed about financial troubles and considering taking out a second mortgage. I left fake bank statements on my desk, showing significant debt, knowing they'd photograph them during their next illegal entry. I created a paper trail suggesting I was in negotiations to sell the house to an investor, complete with fabricated emails from a fictional real estate agent. Melissa recommended hiring a private investigator to dig into my family's history, and what he uncovered was shocking. My parents had a pattern of financial fraud going back years. They'd taken out loans using my social security number when I was in college, defaulting on several. They'd claimed me as a dependent on taxes years after I'd moved out, collecting refunds illegally. The investigator found 3 other credit cards in my name I didn't know about, all maxed out and in collections. Brittany's history was equally damaging. She had 2 bankruptcies filed in California, multiple evictions, and had been sued by 6 former roommates for theft and property damage. One roommate provided a statement describing how Brittany had forged checks and stolen jewelry. Another revealed Brittany had tried the same tenant rights scam in Los Angeles, claiming residency in an apartment she'd never legally rented. The pattern was clear and documented. I strategically placed hidden cameras throughout my house, far more discreet than the security system. These were specifically positioned to capture the confrontation I knew was coming. Every angle of my living room, kitchen, and entryway was covered. I also installed recording devices that would capture audio, clearly ensuring every word of their scheme would be documented. Creating witnesses was crucial. I confided in my trusted neighbors, Ted and Monica, showing them enough evidence to ensure they understood the situation. They agreed to be available during the planned confrontation, ready to provide witness statements if needed. I also alerted the local police to the situation, filing a preliminary report about the trespassing and potential fraud, ensuring they'd respond quickly when called. The paper trail I created was extensive. Fake documents about selling the house were left where my parents would find them, but I also created real documentation of their crimes. Every instance of financial theft was cataloged. Every fraudulent use of my identity was recorded. Melissa prepared cease and desist letters, restraining order applications, and criminal complaint forms, all ready to be deployed at the right moment. I changed all the locks on my house but kept the old locks to reinstall for the confrontation. I wanted them to enter with their copied keys one last time, capturing their illegal entry on camera. The trap was set, every piece in place. I even practiced my reactions in the mirror, knowing I'd need to appear genuinely surprised and initially compliant to let their plan unfold enough to capture evidence of their intentions. The final preparation was emotional. I spent sessions with a therapist preparing for the nuclear destruction of my family relationships. She helped me understand that I wasn't responsible for their choices, that protecting myself from abuse wasn't selfish. I grieved the family I wished I had while preparing to confront the family I actually had. When the day of the family meeting arrived, I was legally prepared, emotionally steeled, and ready to end their exploitation once and for all. The morning of the confrontation arrived with deceptive calm. I'd reinstalled the old locks the night before and positioned myself strategically in my living room with a clear view of the front door. At exactly 10 in the morning, I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Through the window, I watched my parents' sedan pull up, followed by a U-Haul truck. My stomach clenched as I saw Brittany hop out of the truck's passenger side, confirming my worst suspicions. They weren't coming for a meeting. They were coming for a move-in. The doorbell rang, and I took a deep breath before answering. My mother stood there with her practiced, concerned parent face, while my father held what looked like official documents. Brittany hung back, unable to meet my eyes, but with a small smirk playing at her lips. Behind them, I could see boxes stacked in the truck. They'd come fully prepared to force their way into my life. "Nadia, darling," my mother began, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Thank you for agreeing to this family meeting. We have something urgent to discuss about Brittany." The lie rolled off her tongue so easily. I'd never agreed to any meeting, but I played along, stepping aside to let them enter. As they filed past, I noticed my father discreetly checking that his copied key still worked in my lock. Once inside, the performance began in earnest. My mother launched into a theatrical tale of Brittany's supposed mental breakdown in Los Angeles. According to her fabrication, Brittany had attempted suicide, twice been hospitalized, and was released only under the condition that she have stable family support. Brittany played her part, sitting quietly, with downcast eyes, occasionally wiping away what I knew were fake tears. "She needs to be here with family," my father interjected, spreading papers on my coffee table. "The doctors say isolation could be fatal. You have all this space, Nadia. It's time to help your sister." The emotional manipulation was textbook perfect. They knew I'd built my success partially to escape them, and now they were using that very success as a weapon against me. I put up what appeared to be weak resistance, asking about alternatives, suggesting they had room at their house. My mother's response was ready. "Our house is too small, and the doctor specifically said she needs a calm, stable environment. Your house is perfect." Every word was calculated to box me in, to make refusing seem like signing Brittany's death warrant. Finally, I appeared to cave. "If it's really that serious, I guess she can stay for a little while," I said, watching their eyes light up with victory. The speed with which they shifted into action revealed their true preparation. Within minutes, they were directing the unloading of the truck, with Brittany suddenly recovered enough to start ordering where her furniture should go. The mask slipped completely when Brittany headed straight for my master bedroom. "This will be perfect for my recovery," she announced, throwing open the closet doors. "I'll need the ensuite bathroom for my meditation routine." The entitlement was staggering. She'd gone from supposedly suicidal to interior decorating in less than 20 minutes. My parents produced the tenant agreement they wanted me to sign, sliding it across the table with practiced ease. The document was elaborate, claiming Brittany had been residing at my address for 6 months, paying $800 monthly rent. It granted her full tenant rights and even included a clause about family caregiving responsibilities that would make eviction nearly impossible. They'd thought of everything, or so they believed. That's when Cousin Harold made his entrance. I hadn't seen him arrive, but suddenly, there he was, in my doorway, briefcase in hand and lawyer swagger in full effect. "Just here to make sure everything's legal and proper," he announced, as if his presence at a family mental health crisis was perfectly normal. We want to protect everyone's interests, especially given Brittany's fragile condition. The orchestration became almost comical as my mother started rearranging my furniture without asking, claiming Brittany needed clear pathways for her anxiety. My father pulled out his tape measure again, this time openly measuring the spare bedroom for Brittany's art studio, which she apparently needed for therapeutic expression. The woman who'd been too depressed to live was now planning home renovations. Brittany wasted no time establishing her presence on social media. While her parents distracted me with paperwork, she was posting Instagram stories from my bedroom with captions like, "Finally home," and "New chapter in my healing journey." She tagged the location as my address, creating a digital footprint of her supposed residency. Every post was crafted to support their legal narrative while painting me as the supportive sister. The neighbors Ted and Monica chose that moment to walk their dog past my house as we'd arranged. They witnessed my parents carrying in boxes, heard my mother loudly proclaiming, "Brittany's home where she belongs," and saw Harold's obvious legal maneuvering. Their presence as neutral witnesses would prove invaluable, though my family didn't know they were anything but random passers-by. The threats began when I hesitated to sign the fraudulent lease. My mother's concern morphed into cold calculation. "You know, Nadia refusing to help your mentally ill sister could be seen as elder abuse. We're getting older and the stress of Brittany's condition is affecting our health. If you force us to care for her alone, well, Adult Protective Services might be very interested in how you're treating your aging parents." Harold jumped in with legal threats wrapped in false concern. There are laws about family abandonment, especially when mental health is involved. If Brittany were to harm herself because you refused her shelter, you could face both civil and criminal liability. "I'm just trying to protect you here, cousin." The coordination was perfect, each family member playing their rehearsed role in the manipulation symphony. My father added the final touch of guilt. "We sacrificed everything to raise you girls. Now when we need help with Brittany, you want to turn your back on family. What would people say if they knew successful Nadia left her sick sister homeless?" He conveniently forgot the thousands they'd stolen, the credit they'd ruined, the education they'd sabotaged. In their narrative, I was the ungrateful daughter refusing to pay back imagined debts. I let them think they'd won for exactly 37 minutes. That's how long it took for them to fully incriminate themselves, with Brittany measuring my master bedroom for her furniture and my parents discussing renovation plans for my home. When I finally stood up from the couch where I'd been silently watching their premature celebration, something in my expression made my mother pause mid-sentence. "You know," I began, pulling out my phone with deliberate calm, "I've been thinking about security lately, especially after the Johnsons' break-in. So I installed a comprehensive camera system throughout my house. Would you like to see some interesting footage I captured over the last few weeks?" The color drained from my mother's face as I connected my phone to the smart TV. The first video showed them entering my house with their copied keys, my father's voice clear as he said, "She'll never know we were here. We need to document everything for Harold's paperwork." My mother's guilty glance at the camera she hadn't noticed was almost satisfying. That's not what it looks like," my father stammered, but I was already playing the next clip. This one featured their detailed discussion of the fraud plan in my home office, complete with my mother explaining how they'd used tenant laws to steal my house. Brittany's face went from smug to panicked as her own voice filled the room, laughing about deserving my house more than me. Harold tried to maintain his lawyer's composure, reaching for his briefcase. "Now let's not jump to conclusions. Family disagreements don't need to involve." He stopped mid-sentence as the doorbell rang. Through the window, we could all see Melissa Crawford on my porch, holding a thick folder of legal documents and wearing the kind of smile that made opposing lawyers nervous. Perfect timing, I said, opening the door. Everyone meet my attorney, Melissa Crawford. She specializes in fraud theft and what I believe you called it, Harold family property disputes. Melissa entered with the confidence of someone holding all the cards, which she was. Ms. Chen, Ms. Chen, Ms. Brittany. Chen. She began deliberately using their legal names. I have here cease and desist orders for each of you regarding trespassing on my client's property, fraudulent use of her identity, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Mr. Harold Sampson, there's a special addendum for you regarding conspiracy charges and ethics violations that the Bar Association will find very interesting. The doorbell rang again, and this time it was two police officers responding to my earlier filed report. We received a call about attempted fraud and trespassing. Officer Martinez announced his partner already taking in the scene of boxes being moved in and papers spread across my table. Brittany made the mistake of trying to run to the bedroom she'd claimed, possibly thinking she could barricade herself inside and claim residency. Officer Martinez's partner moved to block her path. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay right here while we sort this out. She lives here, my mother shrieked. She's been paying rent for 6 months. We have documents. She grabbed for the fraudulent lease, waving it at the officers. Melissa smoothly intercepted, handing the officers a folder instead. What they have, Melissa explained calmly, are forged documents that claim a backdated tenancy. What I have are bank records showing Ms. Brittany Chen has been living in California until 2 weeks ago. Utility bills from her Los Angeles address and eviction notices from the same. I also have security footage of these 3 individuals discussing their plan to forge these exact documents. I pulled up the security footage on my TV again, this time showing Harold in my parents' living room, coaching them on exact legal language to use. His face went ashen as his own voice explained how to make the fraud bulletproof. The officers exchanged glances, and one began taking out handcuffs. Additionally, I added, handing over another folder. This contains evidence of identity theft going back 7 years. Credit cards opened in my name, loans taken out using my social security number, and tax fraud claiming me as a dependent when I hadn't lived with them since college. There's also evidence of similar schemes attempted by Brittany against 6 previous roommates in California. My mother's reaction was pure theater. How could you do this to your own family? We raised you. We gave you everything. She was actually crying now, though I suspected it was more about being caught than any genuine emotion. I'm your mother. Actually, I responded, my voice steady despite years of pain behind it. You gave Brittany everything. You gave her my college fund, my credit rating, and tried to give her my house. The only thing you ever gave me was the determination to succeed despite you. My father tried intimidation one last time. You're destroying this family when everyone finds out what kind of heartless person you are turning in your own parents. You'll be ruined. We'll tell everyone how you abandoned your sick sister. Melissa pulled out her phone, showing social media posts already going viral. Actually, Mr. Chen, your daughter Brittany already posted about moving into this house. My client's neighbors have provided statements about witnessing your trespassing. Your friend Ruth confirmed you asked her to lie about Brittany's residency. The only reputation being destroyed here is yours. Harold tried to edge toward the door, but Officer Martinez stopped him. Sir, we're going to need you to stay put. Conspiracy to commit fraud is a serious charge, especially for a licensed attorney. Harold's briefcase fell from nerveless fingers as he realized his career was over. The private investigator I'd hired chose that moment to arrive complete with a box of additional evidence. He handed copies to the officers detailing Brittany's 2 bankruptcies, her outstanding warrants in California for check fraud, and the civil suits from previous roommates. One officer immediately got on his radio to confirm the warrants. Brittany Chen, you're under arrest for outstanding warrants from Los Angeles County, the officer announced, producing handcuffs. Brittany's fake tears turned into real panic as she was read her rights. My parents tried to interfere but were warned to step back or face obstruction charges. This isn't over, my mother hissed as the officers prepared to take statements. Family is forever, Nadia. You'll regret this when you're old and alone. Even facing arrest, she couldn't resist one last manipulation attempt, but her words had lost all power over me. As they were led away in handcuffs, I looked at the house they'd tried to steal, the life they'd tried to hijack. The boxes they'd brought sat pathetically in my driveway, Brittany's furniture never making it past the front door. My neighbors stood witness to it, all their expressions mixing shock with satisfaction that justice was being served. The trap had worked perfectly, and for the first time in my life, I'd won against my family's manipulation. The news of my family's arrest spread through our extended network like wildfire. Within hours of their booking, my phone was buzzing with calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Some called to condemn me for betraying family, but surprisingly, many others had different stories to tell. Aunt Susan was the first to break ranks. She called me the morning after the arrests, her voice shaking with years of suppressed anger. "Nadia, I'm proud of you," she began, then revealed how my parents had stolen $10,000 from her husband's business 20 years ago, using family guilt to avoid prosecution. They'd convinced Uncle Robert that pressing charges would destroy the family, the same manipulation they'd tried on me. The dominoes kept falling. My grandmother Margaret, my mother's own mother, reached out through Aunt Susan. At 83, she was devastated, but not entirely surprised. She revealed that my mother had been stealing from her for years, small amounts from her Social Security that added up to thousands. "I always knew Dorothy had problems with the truth," she admitted sadly, "but I never imagined she'd do this to her own daughter." Cousins emerged from the woodwork with their own tales. Cousin Janet revealed that my parents had tried to move into her condo 5 years ago, claiming elder abuse when she refused. Cousin Michael shared how they'd borrowed money for a medical emergency that turned out to be Brittany's first bankruptcy. The pattern was extensive and documented, painting a picture of serial family predators who'd finally picked the wrong target. Social media became a battlefield as Brittany's carefully crafted victim narrative exploded. Her Instagram post about "finally home" became evidence in her fraud case. Friends and followers who'd bought her struggling artist persona were shocked as news articles revealed her extensive criminal history. The 6 roommates she'd scammed in California found each other through the viral posts and formed a support group sharing their experiences and planning to testify if needed. My parents' arraignment was a study in delusion. Despite video evidence of them planning the fraud, they pleaded not guilty and claimed I'd entrapped them. Their court-appointed attorney looked increasingly uncomfortable as he reviewed the mountain of evidence Melissa had compiled. The judge denied bail for Brittany due to her outstanding warrants and flight risk, while my parents were released on $50,000 bail, each wiping out their retirement savings. Harold's situation was particularly satisfying. The Bar Association launched an immediate investigation, and within a week he was suspended pending a full ethics review. His law practice crumbled as clients fled, not wanting to be associated with a lawyer who'd conspired to defraud his own cousin. His wife filed for divorce within the month, claiming she'd been unaware of his activities, but taking half of their remaining assets as she left. The financial consequences for my parents were severe. Legal fees drained their meager savings within weeks. They had to sell their house to pay for lawyers, moving into a cramped apartment in a rough part of town. The friends they'd cultivated with their false respectability disappeared once the truth emerged. My mother, who'd always prided herself on her social standing, found herself stocking shelves at a discount store to make rent. Brittany's time in jail awaiting trial in California revealed more of her true nature. She tried to run the same victim game on her cellmates, but women who'd been through the system weren't as easily fooled as Los Angeles roommates. Letters she sent to former friends begging for commissary money went unanswered. The actress who'd played so many roles finally faced an audience that wouldn't buy her performance. Local news picked up the story, fascinated by the family fraud angle. Successful tech entrepreneur exposes family plot to steal home became a trending topic. The reporter who interviewed me was shocked by the security footage, especially the casual way my family had discussed destroying my life over coffee in my own kitchen. The segment sparked discussions about family financial abuse and the importance of legal protection even from relatives. Other victims began reaching out to me directly. A woman named Helen shared how her brother had used similar tactics to steal her inheritance. A man called David revealed his parents had destroyed his credit to fund his sister's gambling addiction. We formed an informal support network sharing resources and legal strategies. Melissa began offering pro bono consultations to victims who couldn't afford representation, building a practice specializing in family fraud. My house felt different after they were gone. I had a security company do a full sweep, finding 2 more copied keys hidden in the garden and a spare garage door opener taped under the porch. Every lock was changed again, this time with smart locks that couldn't be copied. The master bedroom Brittany had claimed for 10 minutes was turned into a home gym, a daily reminder that I'd reclaimed my space. The pre-trial hearings revealed more evidence of their premeditation. Harold's computer contained drafts of the fraudulent lease going back 4 months, multiple versions, as they refined their scheme. My parents' phone records showed hundreds of calls coordinating the plan. Brittany's Google searches included tenant rights New York, how to establish residency, and tellingly, can family members steal a house legally? As the criminal cases progressed, I also pursued civil action. Melissa filed suits for the identity theft, the stolen college funds, and years of financial abuse. The paper trail we'd assembled was overwhelming. Every credit card, every fraudulent loan, every stolen tax refund was documented. The total amount my parents had stolen over the years exceeded $200,000, not counting the attempted theft of my home. The family fracture was complete but necessary. Those relatives who sided with my parents revealed their own toxic patterns, while others shared how they'd been victimized too. What emerged was a clear divide between those who believed family meant unconditional support regardless of abuse, and those who understood that blood relation didn't grant license to steal and destroy. 6 months after the confrontation, I sat in my therapist's office processing the journey. Dr. Patricia Williams had been instrumental in helping me understand that protecting myself wasn't betrayal, that family bonds don't justify criminal behavior. "You didn't destroy your family," she reminded me during one particularly difficult session. "They destroyed it the moment they chose to victimize you." The legal outcomes were as satisfying as they were necessary. Brittany received 5 years in California for the check fraud and identity theft charges from her roommates, with my case adding another 3 years. My parents each got 2 years plus 5 years probation for the conspiracy and identity theft. Harold was disbarred and received 18 months for his role. The woman who'd mocked my success from my bedroom was now earning 12 cents an hour in the prison laundry. I channeled my experience into purpose, establishing the Family Fraud Foundation. Using part of the civil settlement I'd eventually won, I created a resource for victims of financial abuse by relatives. We provided legal referrals, emotional support, and most importantly, validation that protecting yourself from family predators was not only acceptable, but necessary. The foundation's first fundraiser was held in my home, the very house they'd tried to steal. 50 people attended, each with their own story of family financial abuse. We raised $30,000 that night, enough to help a dozen victims get legal representation. The symbolic victory of celebrating in the space they'd tried to take wasn't lost on anyone. My chosen family grew stronger as my blood family fell away. Friends who'd supported me through the ordeal became closer than any relative had ever been. Ted and Monica, the neighbors who'd witnessed the confrontation, became surrogate parents of sorts, inviting me to holiday dinners and celebrating my victories. Their unconditional support showed me what family should really look like. Romance entered my life in an unexpected way. Marcus, a financial advisor who volunteered with the foundation, understood the complexity of family trauma. He'd been disowned by his parents for refusing to support his addicted brother's lifestyle. Our first date involved comparing notes on family manipulation tactics, laughing at the absurdity of needing security cameras to protect ourselves from relatives. A year later, I received a letter from my mother in prison. Her handwriting was shaky, the tone attempting remorse but still laced with manipulation. She wrote about how hard prison was, how she'd had time to think, how she, maybe, hadn't been the best mother. The non-apology apology ended with a request for commissary money. I filed it with the other letters she'd sent, each one evidence of her inability to truly change. My response was carefully crafted with Dr. Williams' help. I expressed hope for her genuine rehabilitation while maintaining firm boundaries. I wouldn't be visiting funding or participating in any early release programs. Forgiveness, I explained, didn't mean forgetting or enabling. It meant releasing the anger that could poison my future while protecting myself from further harm. The foundation grew beyond my wildest dreams. We partnered with law schools to provide clinics for victims. We created educational materials about protecting yourself from family fraud. Most importantly, we normalized the idea that DNA doesn't grant anyone the right to destroy your life. The shame that keeps victims silent began to lift as more people shared their stories. Unexpected allies emerged from the experience. Ruth, my mother's friend who'd been asked to lie, became a foundation volunteer after realizing she'd almost enabled a crime. Several of Brittany's California victims joined our board, turning their trauma into advocacy. Even some of the relatives who'd initially condemned me came around after their own experiences with my parents' manipulation. On the second anniversary of the confrontation, I hosted a celebration of survival. The house that had been a battlefield became a symbol of victory. Survivors shared their stories. Lawyers offered pro bono consultations, and therapists led workshops on healing from family betrayal. My grandmother Margaret, now living in a secure facility I helped fund, sent a video message praising my courage. The irony wasn't lost on me that my family's attempt to steal my success had actually multiplied it. The foundation work led to speaking engagements, a book deal, and consulting opportunities for companies dealing with internal fraud. The girl they'd tried to rob had become a nationally recognized advocate for financial abuse victims. Every success was a repudiation of their belief that I owed them my achievements. Marcus and I married in a small ceremony in my backyard, surrounded by chosen family and fellow survivors. No blood relatives attended except for Aunt Susan and Grandmother Margaret. As I stood under the arbor, my parents had once measured for Brittany's art installations. I realized I'd built something they could never steal, a life filled with genuine love, honest relationships, and hard-won peace. The last update I received about my parents came from a former neighbor. They were out of prison, working minimum wage jobs, living in subsidized housing. Their attempts to reconcile with other family members had failed as more victims came forward. Brittany remained incarcerated, her release date still years away. The family that had plotted together had fallen apart completely while I'd built something stronger in its place. Looking back, the security camera that caught their conspiracy became a metaphor for clarity. Once I could see their actions clearly, without the fog of manipulation and false obligation, the path forward was obvious. They'd raised me to be successful so they could harvest that success for themselves. Instead, they'd created someone strong enough to stand against them. The trap I'd set wasn't really about catching them in fraud, though that was necessary. It was about breaking free from the generational cycle of exploitation disguised as family love. Every survivor who walked through our foundation doors was proof that we could rewrite the definition of family choosing connection based on respect, rather than accepting abuse based on blood. My house stands as a testament to boundaries held and battles won. The locks they copied have been replaced with biometric systems. The rooms they measured for theft now host support groups and strategy sessions. The master bedroom Brittany claimed for 10 minutes holds my home office where I write grants and plan programs to help other victims. They wanted to steal my home. Instead, they gave me a mission. They gave. Family isn't about shared DNA or childhood photos. It's not about obligation enforced through guilt or manipulation dressed as love. Real family shows up without calculating what they can take. They celebrate your success without plotting to steal it. They respect your boundaries instead of copying your keys. The family I've built understands this, and that's worth more than any genetic connection could ever be. The trap that changed everything wasn't just the cameras and legal preparation. It was deciding I deserved better than being an ATM for abusive relatives. It was choosing to see clearly instead of maintaining comfortable delusions. Most importantly, it was understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for toxic family is to let them face the consequences of their choices, even if those consequences include handcuffs and prison sentences. Family is forever, my mother had hissed during her arrest. She was wrong. Abuse is what ends forever when you find the courage to stop it. Love is what lasts when you build it on a foundation of respect, honesty, and genuine care. The family that tried to steal my home gave me something priceless, the knowledge that I could survive their loss and thrive in their absence. Sometimes the best revenge truly is living well in a house secured by more than locks, surrounded by people who love you for who you are, not what they can take. What would you do if you discovered your own family plotting against you? Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and maintaining toxic family relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up to family abuse. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell for more stories of survival, justice, and the courage to build a better life. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, you deserve a family that adds to your life, not one that tries to steal it. Until next time, stay strong and protect what you've earned.